What's easily one of my favorite shows of all time, Succession, is coming to a close. And just as a forewarning, I'm just going to assume that you have watched up to the most recent episode that I'm reviewing, Season 4, Episode 9, Church and State. And if you haven't, you should, because spoilers. I'm not going to give you context at all. We're just going to dive right in. So, this episode takes place at Logan Roy's funeral, with a lot of Season 4 taking place at one specific location. This time around it's the funeral, and it makes sense that this episode is just kind of sad. There's not really much I find funny about it, despite it being a drama comedy. It's pretty much just depressing all the way through, and I don't really mind that. Of course, I love the drama aspect. It's basically the entire show, and that's about what you're going to get here. So, Kendall, Roman, and Shiv, or as Kendall refers to them, the Sibs, have sort of had a relationship going on that they've wished to maintain, in which they're all being the bestest of friends. But of course, in a show like this, that was never going to last, and so in the last episode, Shiv was cut out, and now she's looking for new plans. Since Shiv has been working with Mattson, the enemy of Kendall and Roman, for some time now, she decides to just fully take his side at this point, and try to help him in buying Waystar. To do this, Shiv enlists the help of one of her famous character traits of not actually giving a shit about her morals. Despite spending nearly the entirety of the last episode denouncing Mencken, who is now the President of the United States, Shiv uses a lot of this episode to try to get in his good graces, as he can help Mattson and her win against Waystar. Shiv ends up having to involve herself in this hilarious scene where pretty much every single character in the show tries to surround Mencken at the same time because he's the president, and she ends up coming out of it pretty much victorious. I mean, it's more of a Mattson win, but Shiv is along with him, so it's quite good for her. By the end of the episode, it seems like Shiv is a lot more secure than she was at the beginning, but that's not entirely true. Since Mattson doesn't really actually need Shiv, it's very likely that he's going to cut her out of this deal, and I don't believe that she knows that because, as always, Shiv thinks she's on top of the world when not really. To finish up Shiv for this episode, because it seems like I'm just tackling her straight away, there's Shiv's eulogy. She does have probably the least memorable of the three speeches that are given at Logan's funeral, but hers is still pretty interesting. A lot of Shiv's speech revolves around how Logan kind of closed out his children when they were children, as he was seemingly working on creating this whole new world that they couldn't even possibly comprehend. Eventually, though, it does build into Shiv talking about her identity as a woman and misogyny in the business, which is very satisfying to see her vent about, but it also feels sort of like she's making it up on the spot. The whole thing ends up being very interesting, and leads me to my final conclusion about Shiv, which is kind of that she just seems misguided. Shiv, after the last episode, wants revenge on her brothers, of course, for constantly cutting her out, and all of the things that she does during this episode are a little misguided. She doesn't fully understand the bigger picture, but she's definitely had a good episode. I wouldn't deny that. She did well. Now, on the other side of things are the CE bros, and this is a term that has become so popularized, and I'm so happy about that. Kendall and Roman, at this point, have been in a back-and-forth situation of just continuing to gain power and lose power each episode, and since Roman went up last episode while Ken went down, it's time for the exact opposite to happen. First, there's Ken, who has kind of a rough opening to the episode, as two things that I totally could have seen coming happen. Rava, his ex-wife, takes away his kids and brings them upstate due to Mencken winning the presidential election and a lot of riots happening in the street, which actually become extremely relevant to the episode. Then, right after, like a scene after, Jess, his assistant, longtime assistant, quits for about the same reason. I mean, this makes a lot of sense, because both of them are women, and also they're citizens. While the Roys are all high and mighty up in their castle, where they don't really have to worry about anything, a lot of the side characters are actual U.S. citizens who live in regular places and work a 9 to 5. It's pretty clear that this has very much affected them, and now it's built its way up to affecting Ken, who is just irrationally angry over this. I mean, sure, a lot of bad things are happening to him, but it's It's not a good look, what he does to these two. He kind of does something akin to Shiv back in Season 2, where she got fired by Gil, but she insisted that she walked out, in which, in the Ken and Jess scene, he makes it pretty clear that he's trying to fire her despite the fact that she's already resigned. However, this might have been just what Kendall needed, as he rides basically the rest of the episode in fucking KLR mode. This guy is really going scorched earth, and it's pretty clear that going into the finale he holds some of the most power. First of all, after Roman fucks up his eulogy, which we will talk about, Ken decides to do it himself, and he delivers a really strong one that both makes his father look generally pretty good, and also delivers at least some honest thought. Afterwards, he starts assembling a team where he talks to both Hugo and Colin about them joining him in his rise to power. A solo rise to power, of course, and that is frightening. And then Ken ends the episode talking to Roman about Shiv's thing with Mencken, and being generally really mean about it, but the fact that he's berating Roman in this disturbing way makes it pretty clear that he's full-on business mode. And, again, frightening. So while Ken is being very Logan mode, Roman is at least trying to dad it. And we were very much shown that this was going to be a Roman episode, and a Roman episode it was. I think most people knew it was not going to go well for our boy. First of all, the eulogy that Roman is meant to give just does not go well at all. After Ewan kind of crashes at the party with this very interesting, historical, and cool approach to giving a backstory to Logan, including details about Rose, his sister, who had been hidden from the show for a very long time, Roman is forced to go on and try to make everything look good. And he does not do that at all. After fumbling with his cue cards for a bit, he comes off stage, and Kieran Culkin delivers my favorite performance of the episode, in which he says, the line that really got to me, is he in there? As in, Logan, his dad, in a coffin. Roman was clearly very put off when Connor sent him a picture of Logan's corpse in a previous episode, so this makes a lot of sense to me that it would really fuck him up and make him break down. It's a pretty sad scene to watch, but makes a lot of sense. However, this is not the end of Roman losing, as of course he loses Mencken to Shiv, which is the one thing that he thought he had. And since Kendall makes fun of him for this, and then also the internet begins to trend the video of him crying at his dad's funeral, which is pretty awful, but of course they do, Roman is not in a good place by the end of this episode at all. And so, he does, of course, walk into the middle of a mob. As I said before, there's a mob going on this whole episode due to the protesters of Mencken's election, and Roman, really loving when people just beat up on him because he did something wrong, doesn't really have Logan to do that for him anymore, or Jerry, so he has to resort to literally walking in front of protesters so that they will beat him up because they don't like him. And it works. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people thought, oh my god, what if they kill off Roman during this episode? Because a lot of people seem to think that the characters are going to die. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. It's a possibility, but I was not at all thinking Roman was going to die here, and no, he doesn't. He kind of just gets up and walks off. But judging from the episode 10 description, it might not be too good for Roman. And that is quite sad, but I can't say I didn't see it coming. Definitely one of the show's strongest traits is being able to show that one of the characters is a literal fascist in one episode and then make me feel bad for them again in the next one. So, that's kind of it for the main three Roy siblings. And that's kind of it for this episode. I really like the direction they took with this one, despite the fact that it was very serious and very, very long. It is probably the longest episode outside of the finale, which is going to be next week. And yeah, it was quite good. As many people have said, Kieran Culkin was a standout this episode, but I also really liked Jeremy Strong. I thought that he was very scary, and as a Kendall supporter, I'm fine with that. Kendall is my boy, he's been my boy, and I do kind of want him to win, I'll be honest.
Ignore the fact that he's not a good person. None of them are. It's okay.
However, before I'm done here, there are still other things to wrap up. There's Tom, who has been Sleepy Tom for the past 3 episodes, whose relationship with Greg, which is iconic, has made me think of kind of a crazy prediction. Tom has straight up just been tired for 3 episodes straight, and this guy really can't get any sleep, so he has Greg Gregging for him. Greg being Tom's servant is something he doesn't really seem to enjoy anymore, and he barely actually does anything for Tom at the funeral despite Tom wanting him to. Tom does not attend the funeral, of course. And since Greg believes he can do more and doesn't need Tom, I'm seeing a Greg betrayal of Tom in the final episode. Now listen, I know everyone loves Tom Greg, but they need an ending. Everyone loves Tom Greg so much that they've become one of the most important relationships on the entire show, and so they need an ending, and this is just where I see it going. If it doesn't, and it probably won't because I can't do predictions for shit, then we'll see. But I know they need an ending, and this is just where I see it going right now. I thought Greg was really, really fun this episode. And that does lead, of course, to the how the fuck are they gonna tie this all up in a finale? And I don't know. I really don't know. This episode tries to make it very difficult to tell because, it kind of has nothing to do with the Matson plot, which seems to be the main idea of the final episode. But, hey, I trust Succession with my life when it comes to finale episodes. I am still so hyped, even if I have no clue what they're going with here. One of my favorite shows. I'm happy to see that it's concluding in what the writers believe to be the best spot with something incredibly interesting, a 90-minute episode. There's a lot of shit that could go down. Kendall killing waiter reveal. Shiv is pregnant and that still has to do something. She's sort of done something with it, but not too much. I don't know. There's a lot that they could do. I'm very excited. This episode kind of made me more and more excited by just kind of not giving me what I wanted. Not to say I didn't like it, I loved it, but there's so much more left in store that they haven't given us, and that is a really good way to get me interested in the finale episode with open eyes. See you next week.